So my name is Anna. I am one of the registered dietitians at Boston Children's. Today is our National Nutrition Month cooking webinar. This year's theme for National Nutrition Month is Beyond the Table, that focuses on food sustainability. And our goal for today is to spread family togetherness and get the kids excited about cooking a healthy, slant-forward recipe.
My name's Katherine Truscott. I'm one of the other dietitians at Children. Today we'll be making a black bean quinoa burger. It includes carrots, zucchini, tomatoes, and kale on a whole wheat roll. The meal contains plenty of plant protein, hearty fiber from the beans and vegetables to keep you feeling satisfied. Lynette, do you want to talk a little bit more about the ingredients and letting us know which foods are sourced locally?
Sure. So actually, if you hand me that back. So I went to a place called Daily Table. There's a few of these markets. They're throughout the Boston area. They're in Dorchester. I don't know if you guys can see this. Much of these ingredients, the sun-dried tomatoes, I'm just going to pass that, the black beans, the refried beans, the quick oats, and the quinoa, which we're going to talk about a little bit, are all available at this market. So it's a really great market. They have a lot of plant-forward stuff. They also offer 50% off of vegetables if you're using your EBT card, which is really wonderful. And these, if you look it up, Daily Table, they're located throughout areas where they have food deserts. So really great in the Boston area.
That's great. So should we walk through the recipe a little bit?
Yeah.
And talk about the ingredients that we have for our burgers?
Sure. So you want me to go? I can go through the ingredients real quick, and then I'll blend them up and put a burger together. Why don't we start with that? All right. So the first part, which let me move these, and then we'll talk about those in a second, because I've used some unique ingredients, and I don't want that to scare anybody because it's really your palate. It's what you like, and then I have some suggestions for some things that would also work. So the base of this is going to be black beans. I used refried black beans, but these are very high in sodium. So you can also take your black beans and you can smash them. And if you do that, you'll use a whole can for this recipe. If you opted to do beans and then refried beans, you would have enough to do some food prep so that you could cook the burgers off and then freeze them and use them at another time. Or you could make burritos or something like that, or say you were making like a black bean burrito and you had grains, because I'm using quinoa today, but that may not be your thing, so maybe you want to use a brown rice. So if you were doing like beans and rice, you could take those ingredients and make a vegetarian burger. To bring some flavor in here, because I tried to keep the salt very, very low, I use sun-dried tomatoes. So these are like a little, maybe not everybody is familiar with these, so if you're not, I recommend using like a tomato paste. And what's great is that you can now get this in a tube, or you can buy very inexpensive in a can, and you can break this up. I never seem to use my whole can, so I love that this is an option now. It's also a flavor bomb, so if you don't have that salt, this is going to get you there, so you could use this in place of that. For the sun-dried tomatoes, I just wanted to show, so they start out really dry and really crunchy, and you just pour some hot water. Chef, can you pass me the bag of sun-dried tomatoes? Pour hot water on them, and they'll get hydrated, and they'll get very, very soft. But they start out like this. They look like, leather. But don't be afraid. They've got lots of flavor. To bind these all together, I'm using quick oats that I just buzzed in. You can even use your coffee grinder. Just grind it up into like a fine powder. You don't have to grind it up either. You could leave it whole. It'll still bind. It'll still do its thing. And then there's other options if you wanted to use a panko, like a breadcrumb, or you want to use a gluten-free breadcrumb. Catherine had asked me if we could use like corn flour. You can certainly use something like that. Really, the base of it is going to be these beans are going to be the muscle that holds this burger together. You need some grains in there so that you get some good fiber, and then you need something that's going to kind of bind it up together. So I'm using this. Then the vegetables are whatever you want to use. So today, I really like kale, and it's available in the markets right now, and it's coming from local farms, so I used kale. Zucchini, in the summer, you can't give it away quick enough because there's so much of it, but it's got great fiber. And then carrots. This has got that sweeter flavor profile, so we're adding a little bit of sweetness, which the tomatoes will give us too. So, something that's familiar for kids too, so that there's something that, they can relate to. And then the last thing, which is kind of a funky ingredient, this is a Chinese, this is a Korean barbecue sauce. It's called gochujang. I'm just going to put a little bit of this in here because I'm not going to add a lot of extra salt. This is a lot of flavor and this is spicy. You don't have to use this. You could use a little bit more tomato paste. You could use like chipotle, like the canned chipotle and adobo. It's up to you. It's whatever your flavor palette wants. But when you take out that salt, you got to find some flavors in there. So I wanted to introduce that. All right, shall we put this together?
Great. Yeah, let's put the burgers together.
All right.
And then maybe while we switch over to that gear, Catherine and I can talk a little bit about, I know we talked a bit already about substituting ingredients, but there are other substitutions. When Catherine and I are talking with people, we always are thinking like, how else can you change a recipe? So one thing with like the black beans, you can use different kinds of beans, like kidney beans, chickpeas.
You could use lentils. Yeah, you could use lentils or black-eyed peas. So I think that other vegetables you could put in there. Lynette, could you try like peppers, onions, and mushrooms?
Absolutely.
Right.
Anything like as I said, it's really the beans that are the muscle for this mixture. So whatever you put in there, I mean, I wouldn't do anything that's going to cook well. So if you wanted to do mushrooms, excuse me, I stayed away from mushrooms because I find that a lot of plant forward stuff is just loaded with mushrooms, and not everybody's crazy about mushrooms. So I wanted to avoid that. So as you can see, I'm just kind of pushing this all together. I'm going to take my gochujang, pop that in there. I'm using that to prop up my bowl too. So a little utilization. I'm going to add my flour. Excuse me. Zucchini. I added the kale, but you could do spinach if you wanted to. You could do collard greens, you could do Chinese greens. You really could do anything. This gives this a bite. A lot, not often, but plant-forward food tends to not have anything that you can chew. And so when you don't have that like chewing, where you're really like moving your muscles in your mouth, there isn't like an excitement there. So kale, which is super healthy, not everybody's into it, but you can probably get it into somebody when we're disguising it with all these other things. But if you really have a picky eater, my son was a very picky eater. There's no way I could have smuggled anything like this in there. Spinach would be great. And then if you wanted to change your profile flavor too, you definitely could. Like I opted to just keep this. I didn't add anything like cilantro, but you could definitely add different herbs, different spices, whatever your palate really wants it to be. So I'm just bringing this together, and you really want,
Chef, are those vegetables cooked before you put them in the bean?
They were not. I did steam the kale because it's very chewy, but everything else is raw, and the quinoa is cooked as well. The quinoa and the beans are cooked, but no, I left the vegetables, they're raw. So I'm going to get in there, and I'm just going to smash the heck out of this because it's really going to bring it together. And I could put it together.
I was going to say that would be fun for the kids. Give them gloves and let them squish it.
It's interactive.
Yeah.
You see that it's coming together. It's holding together really well. And I have a friend of mine who's an engineer, so I used to do a lot of product development. He said if you can make a ball and it'll hold the ball, then it'll hold together when you cook it. So I always hear that in my head. If you can form a ball, it'll cook. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to show you what a finished patty looks like. So this recipe is going to make 4 4-ounce patties. And I just use my little scoop, which I'm not going to show because we don't have a lot of time. So I just scooped this, and then I just flattened this out, put it on the paper, put another piece of paper on top of it, and then just smushed it. Because you don't have to use paper. You could use your hands too. You could put it between plastic wrap as well.
That's another fun thing that the kids could get involved with too. Like each of them get their own patty that they get to shape and form and smash into whatever size and shape they want, as long as it can still cook.
Right, exactly. And if you look at it, like, again, it's better if it rests because all the flavor is going to permeate. It's going to go through the patty and it's going to be tasty. But sometimes it's time. Sometimes you just need to get to it. All right, so we're gonna put a grill in here. These are expensive. I picked this up at Walmart for 19 bucks yesterday. Like, these are really handy. You can also do this in a nonstick skillet. I would recommend something nonstick, but if you don't, if you have cast iron, whatever. It's really up to you. I'm using olive oil. I really like the flavor. It's a good fat. I'm not a dietitian. What I understand is it's good
fat.
Right. And it smells wonderful. And then I'm just going to take this patty and I'm going to put them on there. And brown them off. All right. So this would take a little bit of time. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to scoot them over. And I pre-browned a bunch of these. And this is a good demonstration too, because if you're food prepping, say you want to make, 4 times the recipes, you can brown these and see how nice and pretty those get, because it's got that carrot, it's got that caramelization. You could cook all of these and then you can freeze them, and then you have your very own garden burger, that's custom to you.
Yeah,
really.
That's great.
Right. What else can we talk about?
Yeah. All right. Well,
I can build the burger.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let's
Right.
build the finished product.
Right. So I like to bake bread, but there are lots of good options out there if you want to go with a gluten-free roll or whatnot. But I made these this morning because I miss making bread. And I knew that they were going to be on TV, or I was going to be doing video streams. So I wanted something that looked good for the camera.
They're beautiful.
There you go. So then we just build this. We just put our patty on there. And these are pretty beefy. Like, this is a good little meal here. And then we get some lettuce on there. Gonna build that up. Yeah, let's do a little tomato. It's really up to you. Just do I like a nice thick slice of tomato on there. And then the last one, can you pass me an avocado?
Avocado?
Yeah. Avocado, another really good heart healthy.
Great.
I always think of it as like the planet's butter because it's amazing.
And this is nice because you can see how you can really customize all the toppings. Mm-hmm. And another way to get everybody in the family involved could be like, having like a toppings bar where each kid and adult gets to choose exactly what they want on top of their burger, and giving children especially that little bit of control that they get to put their slice of tomato makes it that much more appealing for a child to try the meal.
And if you wanted to add cheese, that's also another option too. These are all great options.
Really, though, as in the recipe, you have to let it sit for a little bit. Though, Lynette, you said you can get it together a little faster, but you can see like this could also be a fairly quick recipe to get together, which is one of the benefits of having plant-forward meals. And Catherine, do you want to talk a little bit more about what plant-forward means?
Yeah, plant forward is when we choose foods that are for protein sources that are plant-based. And so they use beans or tofu, lentils, like we mentioned, and those are all good sources of protein that we could use. And you could customize this. You could even could you make it into meatballs almost and cook it into a round meatball?
Falafel or like a meatball?
Right.
Absolutely.
So you could put them into or you could take one of those that you've batch made and break it up and put it into a taco shell and make a taco with salsa and some cut up lettuce or whatever on it. So plant forward sources are really easy, economical ways to get healthy protein.
This particular recipe and making a plant forward meatless meatball and patty too is a really good way to again use up your leftovers, depending on what you're making throughout the week and stuff too. It's a good way to kind of utilize those things and bring them together.
That's a great point. And in thinking of that theme I mentioned, beyond the table and food sustainability, that is one of the big principles with food sustainability is reusing ingredients and making leftovers and making sure that the food can stretch further than just one meal.
So if you're batch cooking and making a couple recipes of this or you're only making one and you want to make something else, you have half a can of beans. You could also throw the beans on a salad that you could pack in a reusable pouch to send to school or work, or you could put the beans into a soup,
Yep.
or you can puree the beans and add it to a red sauce and add it to a pasta, and then you sort of have some protein already with your pasta. So there's a lot of different options and ways to make sure that you're using up food and not sticking a half a can of beans in the refrigerator and losing them into the back of the refrigerator.
And what I really like about kale and some of the hardier greens, you can do the same thing with spinach, is that when I get this, because it's usually this huge bushel, I don't use all of it, so I pick all of it, and then I put it in the freezer, and the freezer actually tenderizes it, because it kind of breaks up the molecule. I'm trying not to be too sciencey, but it breaks up the molecules, kind of breaks them up and makes them tender, and so you don't have to blanch it for as long, and so it's really great. And then if you're making a soup, you can pull out your kale, you can toss it in, you have those options too. We do soup. We do soup at least once a week with leftovers. It's a great utilization.
Yeah, and even thinking of the kale being frozen, I know that most of the veggies were raw in this, but how could you use frozen veggies? Like I'm thinking, I like to do a lot of pantry staple meals, like where I already have the frozen veggies, the beans in the cabinet, the tomato paste. So tell us, how could you change the frozen veggies?
You could certainly freeze your carrots. You could also just pull, so there's tricolored pepper mix that you can buy. So in the winter time, so when we don't have as abundant of vegetables, I hit the freezer case quite a bit. It's really I love the onions, the peppers, butternut squash, pumpkin. Those are great offerings too. And again, they're toothsome and they're a little on the sweeter side, so really good utilization. And you can twist off the bag. You don't have to use the bag. You can just use it in bits. So love that.
Yeah, and would you just use the same quarter cup or?
Same thing. I would do whatever you're gonna do. I'd do a third of a cup. Just have a cup of vegetables, whatever they are, just in there. And then just when you bring it together, see if it's gonna smush and fold together. Because really, quinoa has a lot of strength to hold things together as well. But if you did a brown rice, you'd still get something close.
Great.
So if you didn't use the gochujang sauce, the Korean chili sauce, you could use a mixture of spices and have the kids help you pick out the spices like cumin or turmeric or chili powder,
absolutely.
or onion powder, and they could help get the spices out and help you measure them and things like that. So that would be a way to get the kids involved.
Absolutely. And I didn't need any fancy equipment either. I just used a box grater for everything. We really wanted to focus on a recipe that didn't require a lot of special things. I mean, you don't need that to cook. You just need if you have a peeler, a good knife, and a box grater, you can do quite a lot of stuff. And so that's really really keeps it open for you. So it isn't intimidating. You don't have if you read a recipe and there's all these different types of appliances, you don't need those.
No, that's good to know. That's a good tidbit, because I feel like a lot of times we look at recipes and there's so much equipment. So knowing that you can look at the recipe and not only change the ingredients, but change the cooking tools to be a little bit more simpler makes it more accessible to everybody.
The best tools that you have in the kitchen are your hands. So, you get in there and you squish and stuff. And then again, that's really good with your kids because they like that. That's an excuse to get messy and try to keep it contained in the kitchen. But also, it's a reason to get your hands in there.
Yeah.
The other way you could have kids help is having the younger kids help set the table, fold the napkins, getting them involved in it, so that they're all part of it and you can all sit down together to the meal, because that's an important part. Everybody eating all at the same time.
Yeah, and really there's no age that, I mean, I guess there technically is an age that's too young, but even my daughter, who's 1, we'll have her help us by even we don't make homemade bread like this, but she would be like, can you pass us the bread? And then someone will hand her the bread and she'll toddle it over to us. So it can definitely start at a really young age. And the earlier that you can start engaging children in helping in the kitchen, helping to cook, really helps set the foundation for better eating lifelong.
And their palates change. My son, when he was 1, wouldn't eat as much. Now he's 16. But he eats everything because he's part of that, because he tries it, because we've engaged in a lot of meal prep as a family. So if I put an onion in something when he was a kid, it was the worst. But when he was making those choices, even if he didn't really care for it, he would still eat it because he made that choice. And so it was a great way to introduce these new flavors and to work on his palate.
Yeah, that's great. And really with National Nutrition Month, I didn't mention, but it really celebrates registered dietitians and diet technicians who are the nutrition experts trained in health and wellness. And so it's a good plug to work with a registered dietitian if you are feeling like you want your child to eat a more diverse palate.
Lynette, what does Children's Hospital do for supporting sustainability practices?
The amount of things that we buy local. So we're reducing that carbon footprint. It's really one of the things that we really focus on and trying to be what I have a chef who's standing right here. What are we, under 90 miles that we try to source?
Yeah.
You can hear him talking in the background. So that's really something that we really are very proud of here at the Children's Hospital. And if you come into our food court, you'll see like all of the little snacks that we have. They're all from like local or women owned or people of color. Like we really, really strive for that diversity. I mentioned the composting, water conservation, local farms. We're really trying to bring more plant forward menu items too. And that's not a challenge, but it's an opportunity that we're really looking forward to because we want people to try things and, you know, explore and get more vegetables into themselves, you know, and that's so much better for the planet as well.
Right. That brings us to another point where we talk about Myplate as a model, and on Myplate as a model, half of the plate is fruits and vegetables, about a quarter is protein, and another quarter is whole grains, and then there's milk on the side. So today, the burger you made, you know, the whole grains come from the bread and the oats, and the quinoa. Thank you. And the plant forward was the black beans, but as we mentioned, you could use kidney beans, pinto beans, black-eyed peas, lentils. But other sources of protein would be like fish, tofu, shellfish, chicken, skinless.
Or seitan, like the
Yep.
textured vegetable protein.
Yep. And skinless chickens and turkey, goat, bison, lean pork, and occasionally red meat. Those are all good sources of healthy proteins too. And then when you look at the fruits and vegetables, we did quite well. We added avocado and tomato and lettuce. And then in the burger was tomatoes and zucchini and kale and carrots. But if you wanted to add more, you could add like cucumber slices on the side or carrot sticks on the side. You could, if you wanted to add more fruit, you could do a couple apple slices or frozen berries or banana slices. And then for milk, you would use a cup of low-fat milk and maybe a scoop of yogurt on top of the fruit, or even with the cucumbers, and make it more of a savory spread for your burger.
A cucumber sauce with some dill and like yogurt would be great, like a little Vaseline.
Yeah, so something like that. So I think that, you know, building healthy plates is important, and we should, you know, try and include all of the food groups as often as we can. Not every meal you have is going to include all of them, but that would be an example.
That's great. So I feel like we are getting at time. I don't know if we have any questions in our Q&A, but if anybody, we do.
How can you give your child veggies through a feeding tube if they can't eat by mouth, but can't have blended real foods?
Blended, I'm thinking, and this could be wrong, so maybe whoever asked the question could add a little info. Are you meaning blended real foods by mouth or in the tube?
It just says if they can't eat by mouth, but can have blended real foods. So I think that what they're asking is if you can put puree vegetables, if you cook them really well and then put them in a blender and puree them super soft, super well, smooth, that they would go through a G tube, not necessarily an NG tube, but they would go through a G tube, and you may have to thin them down with either milk or broth to make sure that they don't get stuck. But then flushing the tube afterward would be super important too, with a little water.
And definitely something that you can work with your child's registered dietitian on, ways to incorporate more of those fruits, vegetables through the tube as well.
Yeah. I hope we answered your question. I don't see any other questions right now.
Yeah, I don't see anything else either. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.